Donald Trump is losing it on New Year's Day as his dark past is surfacing. And it's Rupert Murdoch, of all people, who is leaving hints about just what Donald Trump was up to at Mar-a-Lago with Jeffrey Epstein. And Murdoch is doing it through his paper, The Wall Street Journal, in a blockbuster article they just published this week, but also through an article published by the New York Post, also owned by Rupert Murdoch, an article that was published back in 2007, which talked about Jeffrey Epstein potentially being banned from the spa at Mar-a-Lago, but not being banned from Mar-a-Lago. And Epstein is even quoted in this New York Post article from 2007 saying, "I'm not banned at all." And there were no denials from Donald Trump when Epstein said, "I'm not banned from Mar-a-Lago." Now, this follows also the news from the New York Times that there are at least 5.2 million more pages of Epstein files that have not been reviewed by the Department of Justice in clear violation of the Epstein Transparency Act. And you, as a MeidasTouch YouTube viewer and audio listener, will know. Back on December 23rd, we said that there were at least 1.2 million records that were missing that had not been produced or reviewed by the DOJ. And I wrote that I expected there's probably 5 to 10 million more records that are being concealed. And now it's pretty clear, but wasn't clear already, why Donald Trump is concealing it. The path here traces back to Mar-a-Lago. So let me show you first this Wall Street Journal article from this week, and let me share with you the hints that's in there. And Ryan Goodman, who does a great job breaking down lots of legal news and lots of news in general, he called this out as well. So the Wall Street Journal article, the headline was as follows: "The incident that prompted Trump to ban Epstein from the Mar-a-Lago spa." So you may look at that headline and say, well, Trump banned Epstein from Mar-a-Lago. That seems to be a good thing, but you have to ask yourself, when did that take place? Then as you get into the article, it talks about 2003. But when you read that headline, notice what it says: from the Mar-a-Lago spa, not from Mar-a-Lago. And it should also be noted that Epstein really wasn't going to the Mar-a-Lago spa in the first place. What the article talks about was Donald Trump was sending people who worked at the spa, young girls, young ladies, to Epstein's house a mile and a half, 2 miles away. In other words, what appears to be the message here, if you read between the lines, was that it was a fake ban that Donald Trump did of Epstein, and that what took place was that one of the girls' dads found out about what was going on, got angry, threatened Trump, and it seems that there was this fake ban that was announced, but in reality, Epstein was never actually banned from Mar-a-Lago's premises, and he wasn't even actually going to the spa to begin with. The girls were going from the 90s from the spa to Epstein's house. So let's just take a look at how the Wall Street Journal wrote this article, and then let's break it down in detail. So the Wall Street Journal's article states as follows: Jeffrey Epstein wasn't just a frequent visitor of Donald Trump's Mar-a-Lago club in the late 1990s and early 2000s. The club was also sending spa employees, usually young women, to Epstein's nearby mansion for massages, manicures, and other spa services, according to former Mar-a-Lago and Epstein employees. Do you notice the very careful language that's used there by the writer? They're saying Epstein went to the club, the young girls went to Epstein's mansion. There's no reference here that Epstein was even going to the spa. It was from the spa to Epstein's house. The house calls went on for years, the article says, even as spa employees warned each other about Epstein, who was known among staff for being sexually suggestive and exposing himself during the appointments, according to the former Mar-a-Lago employees. What the Wall Street Journal there is describing as sexual assault and sexual harassment. When they say sexually suggestive, let's just be very clear with the language of what was transpiring. Sexual assault, sexual harassment, and this was part of Epstein's sex trafficking ring. And we know that, for example, article with Virginia Giuffre, who was a young girl, underage, recruited from Mar-a-Lago, who was sex trafficked. And I'm going to show you in a moment, too, emails between Steve Bannon and Jeffrey Epstein, when Epstein was still alive, saying that I can't believe that people have not made the connective tissue that it was Mar-a-Lago and Trump, and that was the location where the girls were brought to Epstein. You have Bannon saying that in an email. I'm going to read you the email so that there could be no doubt what was specifically said. The words are important, so I'll go through that email with you. The article goes on to say, the spa occasionally provided to house calls for other members. Epstein wasn't a dues-paying member of the club, but Trump told staff to treat him like one. The employee said Epstein had an account at the spa where his companion, Ghislaine Maxwell, booked appointments on his behalf. That came to a halt in 2003 after an 18-year-old beautician returned to the club from a house call to Epstein and reported to managers that he had pressured her for sex, former employees said. Okay, let's take a look right now, though, at this October 15th, 2007 article from page 6. And this is from the New York Post, owned by Rupert Murdoch. It says as follows: lawyers for Manhattan billionaire investor Jeffrey Epstein, who has agreed to plead guilty to soliciting underage hookers, are bracing for a slew of lawsuits from as many as 40 young women who came to his Palm Beach mansion for massage sessions, page 6 has learned. And it goes on to say, meanwhile, the Mar-a-Lago club in Palm Beach last night confirmed a website report that Epstein had been banned there. Quote, he would use the spa to try to procure girls, but one of them, a masseuse about 18 years old, he tried to get her to do things, a source told us. Her father found out about it and went absolutely apeshit. Epstein's not allowed back. However, Epstein tells page 6 in New York Post, he denied that he is banned from Mar-a-Lago and says, in fact, he was recently invited to an event there. And there's no statement from Donald Trump or anyone saying, no, Epstein is lying. So you see the distinction there. He may have been banned from the spa, but doesn't seem like from Mar-a-Lago, and he was never going to the spa in the first place. They were sending the girls to his mansion, and this was taking place during the 1990s and through the early 2000s when Epstein was engaged in the child sex trafficking ring. The spa was sending, this is when Trump was best friends with Epstein, when Epstein and Jean-Luc Brunel and all these people were engaged in this conduct, and he was sending the girls from the spa to Epstein's place. Now, as Ryan Goodman says, notice that he wasn't kicked out from Mar-a-Lago, but just the spa. He says, look at the title right here. And then he says, the Trump Organization attorney on the record said Trump prohibited Epstein from visiting the club around 2007 as a reaction to criminal charges that had been filed against Epstein. But again, Epstein even denies that. And here's a book excerpt by then Miami Herald journalist and a Wall Street Journal writer saying a membership log shows that Epstein's account at the club was closed October 2007 for the first time. So really, it seems in connection with the guilty plea, that's when the account was finally closed, if it was ever actually closed at all. Now, you'll recall what Donald Trump said when he was on Air Force One about Mar-a-Lago being used as a recruiting ground for Virginia Giuffre. I'll get to that in a moment, but take a look right here at the emails between Epstein and Steve Bannon. Epstein writes to Bannon, Prince Andrew and Trump's today. Too funny. Recall Prince Andrew's accuser came out of Mar-a-Lago, and Steve Bannon says, can't believe nobody is making you the connective tissue. And this is from June of 2019, and Epstein saying, Prince Andrew and Trump today, too funny. Recall Andrew's accuser came out of Mar-a-Lago, and Bannon's like, what do you mean? Are you with Trump? Are you talking to Trump right now in 2019? No, Bannon goes, can't believe nobody's making you the connective tissue. That's coming from Bannon right there. Now, let me share with you something else. Here were the ads for the Trump spa attendants. It says, Mar-a-Lago seeks spa attendants for our ladies and men's locker room facilities. And it says, we're currently seeking attendants. College students are encouraged to apply. So they would then have these young college girls work at the spa. And then the uniform was a white miniskirt and a skin-tight white polo top right there. And by the way, while all this was going on, Donald Trump was flying on Epstein's plane over and over again. Back in recently, Donald Trump said, I was never on Epstein's plane at all, although there's an email from January 8th, 2020 from prosecutors. For your situational awareness, wanted to let you know the flight records we received yesterday reflect that Donald Trump traveled on Epstein's private jet many more times than is previously reported or that we were aware, including during the period we would expect to charge Ghislaine Maxwell. And they reference date in the 1990s when, by the way, all this conduct was going down. What do you think they were doing on the airplanes together? What do you think they were doing when they would hang out together? What do you think they were doing together when they would invite what they would call the models to Mar-a-Lago when it would just be Trump and Epstein? What do you think was going on or what they were trying to do? I mean, let's not be naive. I mean, these are grotesque creatures. These are disgusting human beings. Now, take a look at what Donald Trump said aboard Air Force One when he was asked about Virginia Giuffre and Epstein using the spa to recruit for the child sex trafficking ring. Trump goes, yeah, people that work in the spa. I have a great spa, one of the best spas in the world at Mar-a-Lago, and people were taken out of the spa, hired by him. In other words, and other people would come and complain, this guy is taking people from the spa. I didn't know that. And then when I heard about it, I told him, I said, listen, we don't want you taking our people, whether it was spa or not spa. I don't want them taking people. And he was fine. And then not that too long after that, he did it again. And I said, out of here. Question, Mr. President, did one of those stolen persons, did that include Virginia Giuffre? Trump, I don't know. I think she worked at the spa. I think so. I think that was one of the people. Yeah, he stole her. Just so you can see for yourself. Here is what he said, so you can just see him say it. Here, play this clip right here.
Mr. President, Epstein has a certain reputation, obviously. Just curious, were some of the workers that were taken from you, were some of them young women?
Were some of them
young women?
Well, I don't want to say, but everyone knows the people that were taken. And it was the concept of taking people that work for me is bad. But that story's been pretty well out there. And the answer is yes, they were.
Yes, they were. Yes.
Yeah.
What did they do?
In the spa.
In the spa.
Yeah, it's people that work in the spa. I have a great spa, one of the best spas in the world at Mar-a-Lago. And people were taken out of the spa, hired by him. In other words, gone. And other people would come and complain, this guy is taking people from the spa. I didn't know that. And then when I heard about it, I told him, I said, listen, we don't want you taking our people, whether it was spa or not spa. I don't want him taking people. And he was fine. And then not too long after that, he did it again. And I said, out of here.
Mr. President, did one of those stolen, persons, that include Virginia Giuffre?
I don't know. I think she worked at the spa. I think so. I think that was one of the people. Yeah. He stole her. And by the way, she had no complaints about us, as you know. None whatsoever.
Now, there you have it, folks. And so, yes, there is 5.2 million documents or pages or records that are missing. I still think it's more. But now you compare this 2007 report. You compare that with what was taking place with this most recent report, rather, from 2025. And you've got some, despicable connections. I mean, just take a look at what else is in this New York Post report. During the probe that led to Epstein's plea deal, which will put him behind bars, this is the sweetheart deal. Underage girls told cops they claimed to be over 18 and gave the financier massages for hundreds of dollars. One girl, described in court as 14 years old, said Epstein used a purple vibrator on her while she partially stripped. Cops say Epstein's assistant, Sarah Kellen, helped arrange the massages. The lawyers have identified up to 40 women who can come forward. Horrific stuff. Anyway, hit subscribe. Let's get to 6 million, and thanks for watching.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to add the MeidasTouch podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts for new updates every single day.